What is going on, guys? We are here today with Mandy McAllister out of Chicago, and she is, I believe, the CEO of GoBundance Women, right? And you have a bunch of different things that you do in the real estate investment space. And you were introduced to me by a good friend of mine, and he told me the kind of gist of everything you have going on. And so I'm super excited to hear about all of that. So we're going to go into all your different investments, how you're getting into car washes, how you're doing these different JVs and apartment deals. Probably touch on a little bit what it's like to lead a premium mastermind like GoBundance Women, and just be a high performer in general. So I'm super excited to dive into this with you today, Mandy. But first, let's do a little bit of a background. You maybe give like the too long, didn't read 3 minute intro about you and sort of where you came from.
Sure. I got interested in real estate investing in 1999. Didn't buy anything until I was 35 years old in 2015, but then really figured out how to scale pretty quickly. Because the first thing I bought was a fourplex, and I realized automatic scale. Wow, let's run after this, and ended up being able to buy enough small multis. I call it about 6 units to 60 is my wheelhouse. To buy that size of property to buy my way out of my medical device sales job. Because the punchline of my life, or at least one of them, Mike, is I chose not to go to medical school because I didn't want to be on call. And then I ascended the medical device sales ladder such that I ended up on call. So it was a whole hilarious thing. But bought my way out of my W-2 and then had space in my life where they wanted a new leader for GoBundance Women so that it could be for women by women. That would make it a little more beautiful. And I was able to jump at that chance. So awesome. Here we are today.
Sweet. I love it. So 1999, I mean, you were kind of doing real estate, I would say, kind of before it was cool. Like it was still a popular thing back then, but it wasn't like the last, 6 or 7 years where like everyone is beginning into real estate. So you've seen like the market cycle changes and things like that. How was that experience for you? We don't get a ton of people that come on the show that were around pre-2008, let alone in the 90s. So what's your perspective like on that and sort of what things are looking like right now?
Oh, don't get me wrong. I was interested in real estate investing because my college friend was telling me that her dad bought the house and she was renting out the rooms to her friends. And I thought, oh my God, and you get to keep that money? That's the best idea I've heard in my whole life. So I, very analysis paralysis, very, whatever the difference of investing stuff between men and women is. I think girls really try to be perfect and boys sometimes are taught to be brave. There's really a great TED talk on the subject, but that trying to find the one perfect investment kept me from actually being all in on action until, much, much later. So, when I originally started, it was as basic as you get. It was a 25% down, following all the rules, nothing creative, because I was worried that I was going to screw it up 150 different ways. Yeah. So really, really bread and butter vanilla in the beginning.
But you're still taking action. And I think, that helps you stand out from a lot of different people with that. So that's great. So, we got a lot of different things we can dive into on this show. Just to give people some context, what does your business and your portfolio look like right now?
So it's roughly 370-ish doors of, this is not syndicator math, or it's kind of syndicator math. You know how? Yeah. So 104 of that, mind you, is a syndication that I own like 2% of.
Okay, so you're an LP in that one. Yeah.
Exactly. I'm a GP.
Oh, GP.
Of that. Yeah, I have syndicated. I don't love syndicating because you get this tiny little slice and you still do all of the same work. My favorite, my wheelhouse of investment is joint venture. I figured out pretty quickly that a 4-unit is great. And I got a great, 30-year fixed loan on it. But if you wanted to go bigger, then you could chase agency debt if you're willing to borrow more than $1 million. And you meet all that criteria. You meet that experience, the net worth, the liquidity criteria. And I didn't when I originally wanted to dive in. And then, so if you borrow a lot, you get a great loan. You borrow a little, you get a great loan. In the middle, it's like this black hole of commercial lending, which is pretty difficult to get into. So what I did is I found a couple of partners that were interested in the type of investing that I'm interested in. So let's go a little bit bigger. Let's secure the non-recourse agency debt, and let's do it on a Fannie Mae loan specifically, because we're going to hold this for the long term. We're going to get a 12-year term. And then if and when we appreciate, we'll be able to pull out some of the upside on a supplemental loan. You can only do that on a Fannie Mae. You cannot do that on a Freddie Mac. So beginning with the end in mind was super important. And joint venturing really is what helped me catapult myself into the larger stuff.
Yeah, I love what you just said there, because you just showed that I know you're a true operator in that kind of space versus a lot of the people that I talk to that they talk about all their units. They probably even couldn't explain the different benefits of the debt that you just said, because all they know is that they put some money into an LP and now they're going to go around their professional syndicator or whatever, a fundraiser. But you're actually getting involved in the deal. So that's great. So I guess just to, you're the first person we've had on the show that I guess understands these different kind of debts and these different benefits, probably like you outlined there. So give us like the explain like I'm five version of that. What is the benefit of having this, this Fannie Mae specific product, having this like larger debt, being able to roll it into 12-year, rolling it into a different kind of debt, which you said, which I honestly haven't heard of that before. Give us like the brief outline of why you would choose to do that.
So I actually hired a coach back in the day when I wanted to go from 4 units to then start adding a 0, and realized that, he lost $50 million in the downturn. And the reason I hired this guy is because I wanted to know how to not lose $50 million. And my primary takeaway of that time I worked with him was he cross-collateralized everything. One domino fell in 2008 and the entire portfolio was wiped out. So that made me feel like if I can buy something in obviously it's in its own LLC. Each larger asset is in its own LLC, so I get that protection. But also on a loan that's non-recourse, what that means is if it hits the fan, I'm not personally liable. Yes, I give back the property, but so long as I can prove that I didn't commit fraud or all of these other bad boy type things, then I give back the property. So if I had a portfolio of 10 $5 million properties, so $50 million, same thing as my guy I hired as a coach, and I lose one, I still have $45 million to live on. So I'm not making that tremendous error, right? So one more thing that I kind of learned in that process of taking things down on agency debt was Freddie Mac allows for Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac are both government-backed institutions that this is what we're talking about when we say agency debt. You probably know of the residential type loans that they do, but they also do this investment grade stuff. So if you're not aware of that, that's what we're talking about here. Well, Freddie Mac, if you achieve an increase in NOI and you increase the value of that property, you have to do a full cash out refi if you want to enjoy any of that upside. Well, what Fannie Mae, one of the great parts about Fannie Mae is that you can allow for a second loan, a supplemental loan that will be able to pull some of that out. But there's upsides and there's downsides of anything. My entire approach is to, kind of Warren Buffett, Charlie Munger type. Like I like to buy and watch. I'm not necessarily a buy and hold. You wanna give me $10 million for the thing I paid $4 million last year? Sure, I'll consider selling it to you, right? But I'm mostly just watching what's happening in the marketplace. So you need there's a tremendous prepayment penalty, yield maintenance type thing with these agency debt loans. So it's not a perfect fit for everybody, but those who like to buy and watch, it is a perfect fit.
Yeah, that's awesome. And so you're getting into these kind of loans, if you didn't meet the requirements. I know there's a lot of like net worth requirements, probably different things about the asset they look for. I would assume there's an experience requirement as well. They're not just going to give these loans to someone that's brand new.
Totally. And that actually recently that changed. So I mean, first off, disclaimer, I'm not a lender. You need to talk to a lender about this. I'm not your accountant. I'm just your friend, Mandy, who's had some experience with this. But if it recently changed that you needed to have held multifamily property for at least 2 years and or had that type of loan in order to go get that type of loan, that agency debt loan. So it's kind of like a catch-22, right? So what I ended up doing was partnering with someone who had that type of loan so that I could qualify for it. The new rule, though, Mike, is that if you have small multis to duplexes up to quads, and you have 10 units of that type of real estate, and you've held that for at least 2 years, then you can qualify for one of the small balance loan programs. So absolutely talk with somebody who lends in the agency space. You also have to show a net worth equal to or greater to than the amount of the loan you're borrowing. So if I'm going to borrow, if I need to borrow $5 million in order to take down whatever deal and my net worth's only 4 million, you could be my partner if your net worth is over 1 million, and we collectively can have that net worth of $5 million. So absolutely something to keep in mind.
Yeah. So as you're kind of going into these deals and you're trying to forecast the return and different things, it's obviously going to be very different from residential real estate. A lot of residential investors, they look at the cash flows, potential appreciation, things like that. And then with these style, I mean, obviously multifamilies, people do value adds, try and like increase based on cap rates and different things. But when you're looking at these, because they have these long prepayment penalties, do you still analyze them the same way? Or are you considering kind of like the aggressive debt pay down as well with all this? If it's like cheap debt, like what does the full analysis picture look like when you're looking at these kind of deals with this kind of debt?
So actually when it comes to this type of commercial real estate or commercial real estate in general, it's only about the numbers, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like the valuation is solely a product of what is the net operating income that you can achieve. And you're making a ton of assumptions when you're doing that. So when you're underwriting in single family, you get your comparables and you know what that 4-bedroom is, you know what this 3-bedroom is, and you're going to be something in that ballpark. Well, it's all a function of what's the net operating income on commercial real estate, right? So one thing that I get a chance to, help out people who want to get involved in this small multi-type investing. And I always underwrite, just kind of my overall thesis of how to approach underwriting is you got to underwrite in place. So you're going to get the numbers from the current owner, the trailing 12 T12 profit and loss statement. So the most recent 12 months of numbers. And the bank is going to give you a loan based off of in place of what's actually happening. So you're going to need to figure out what the debt coverage ratio is in place in order to qualify for permanent financing like I like to go after. And then when it comes to value add, what you're talking about there is if you increase an NOI, then you've exponentially increased the value of that property. My favorite type of value add is anything that doesn't have a construction risk associated with it. So I love a ratio utility bill back system, a RUBS system. I love charging a pet rent when there's no pet rent, or a laundry room, or storage in a basement, or those types of things that I'm not sinking $15,000 into a kitchen in hopes to get $500 more in rent. So, what is a non-construction risk NOI builder?
Yeah, that's perfect. I love what you said there about you're making a ton of assumptions. I think that's a really hard thing for people to do when they are going from like the residential space to the commercial space. Because you're right, with residential, you can make very calculated decisions based off of historicals because there's such like a high rate of transactions that occur in the residential space. It's not evaluated based off the NOI, but based off of the comps in the neighborhood or the area. And that just doesn't quite exist the same with commercial.
And no matter how skilled you are, an assumption is always a guess.
Yeah.
No matter what, the best investors in multifamily, in commercial real estate, they're still just guessing. So one thing I say a lot is, how close to truth can you get? And this is why I encourage people to get really granular on a single market. If you get really good at knowing what property management will cost you in Indianapolis, awesome, run at that market. Because it's going to be different there than it's going to be in Spokane, Washington.
For sure. Yeah. And that's always I would say it's funny. We have like our instant investor coaching program that we work with to help people get started with this sort of stuff. And one of the most fascinating things to me is people's risk profile with things like that is always inversely related to their income and like their personal financial position. It's like this fear of loss. And getting into like that commercial space, you just kind of have to be comfortable with that potential risk. But at the same time, I also feel like the best multifamily people I know, they are already from that strong financial position because they are able to understand how money works a little bit better. So it's
you want to make $100,000, you got to be willing to risk 10,000. You want to make $1 million, got to be willing to lose 100,000, right?
Yeah.
So that being said, though, it gets a lot easier to lose $100,000 when your net worth is a couple $1 million,
Absolutely.
So it's all about balance. It's all about growth.
Yeah, that's awesome. So I guess for people that are looking to, get into these larger assets like this, there's obviously a few different places you can be. I've seen people get into as like a deal finder. I've seen people get in as like a fundraiser. I've seen people get in by working as like an underwriter for some of these different firms. If there was someone that was trying to do it from like an investment standpoint, kind of like you do, as opposed to like working for one of these companies? What do you think would be the best way to approach it?
I don't have a lot of regrets in my life, but one is that I didn't house hack. I wish I would have lived in a 4-unit and rented out the rest, right? And then I would have lived for free. Well, one thing I did do over the last couple of years is I did a bunch of live-in flips. So you live in the house and then you get to keep for tax-free up to $250,000 worth of that after you've lived in it for 2 years. Well, do that a couple of times and you could have a really large sum of cash to throw into something to really propel yourself into a larger asset. So that's really kind of how I came up with some big down payments to help me grow. But, living like you're broke, it's not sexy. None of this like wealth building stuff is sexy. It's just doing the stuff that you need. It's like dieting, right? Like you need to eat less, you need to exercise. You freaking know what you need to do. Just go do it, So how can you build more money and spend less of it so that you can throw it into something that's going to help you live a life like no one ever dreamed of?
Yeah. And unfortunately, just like with health stuff, people always seek the quick upgrades, in their wealth as well. It's just like, they sold 6-minute abs as like forever. Like that was a thing. And only recently you don't really see that a lot anymore. I guess you still do on certain network TV channels. But the same thing goes with wealth, right? It's just going to take a long period of time. So like it takes a long time to get in shape. So getting specifically into those larger multifamilies, is that how you suggest people get started though? Is that they work on banking that money and having that available? Or is there like a hustle component that someone could bring in as well that you think would also be mutually beneficial with like other operators to get potentially cut into deals?
Yeah, you've heard it from all of the gurus. If you find a deal, then you'll be able to find someone who needs a deal, right?
Yeah.
Like right now where we're at in 2023, December 13th, 2023, when we're filming, the deals are the harder part to come by, in my humble opinion.
Yeah.
So if you're finding those deals, absolutely take those and network with the people who are doing the type of investing that you want to do. If you want to syndicate, go make friends with syndicators. If you want to buy and hold, make friends with people like me who buy and watch the market, but deals are really where it's at right now.
Yeah. How have you been successful with finding deals? Or I guess, are you kind of removed from that part? I've talked to a lot of different people. Some people do the direct to seller stuff. That's what we specialize in on the residential side. A lot of people, they work exclusively with brokers and focus on building broker relationships. Seems to be no right or wrong way. It just sort of depends on people's, I guess, appetite.
So I think whatever you're going to do, you got to do it all the way, right? I'd done a mailer. I did it like 3 times and then I gave up. So I got nothing out of it. I just wasted a crap ton of money, right? So if you're going to do it all the way. I was, when I was ramping my portfolio, I really was doing that when I was working a full-time W-2, my medical device sales job, and I was a single mom. So the extra hustle of trying to squeeze out an extra 1% or 2% in terms of return, I chose to let the brokers work for the money because those guys work for their money, right? So I went in terms of building broker relationships. But I think, one of the things that doesn't get a lot of airtime is, when you have a real crystal clear criteria and you have your money set up in such a way that you don't have to do a deal, then you can wait when there's no deals that fit your criteria. I feel like there's a lot of hysteria, especially in this ramp up and all these syndicators that, oh my God, I have to do a deal. I need to feed my family. No, that is not how I've really structured this portfolio. I have a floor of income that helps me live my life. And I get to go live my life. And when a deal presents itself, like right now, there's a 40 unit in Kansas City that looks interesting. I'm running at it, right? I don't have to be thirsty for it because if that doesn't happen, then I'm still feeding my family.
Yeah. And that's such an underrated comment there. And so many people, especially when they're first getting started in real estate, their goal is passive income, it's financial freedom, all those different things. And as a result, they start to make these ridiculous decisions because they have in their goal tracking sheet, whatever, they need to buy X amount of properties this year to reach their financial freedom number. But what happens is exactly what you're saying. They start trying to force these deals, they start getting over their skis, they start buying stuff that doesn't really make sense because they're not coming from a place of financial strength. Like one of our biggest things has always been focusing on building like the massive income before the passive income. So learning how to make real money and build a business so that you are liquid and available to have these investment opportunities when they come through. But it kind of goes back to, the fitness and wealth building thing. There's a lot of patience that's required with that. It does require work. It is going to take longer than you want, but that is the easiest way to ultimately be successful.
And I love that. What was that? Massive income before passive income.
Exactly.
I always talk about an engine for cash flow that feeds my forever money.
There you go.
Engine.
Yeah, that's great.
And a lot of it too is being in a spot where you can trust your own judgment. Because it's like we're playing double dutch. We're waiting for the right time to jump in. But if you're not willing to take that risk and jump in when it's time, and you trust what you see is true, you really got to do the reps now. So that you can see can recognize a sale when you see it in the coming months.
Exactly. And the great thing about kind of having that, I would say, like that skill set and knowing how to make money, knowing how to recognize opportunities, is when we get into phases like right now where the economy is a little bit weird, you can still take care of yourself. You're not just having to ride on the coattails of a strong economy in order to make money or in order to, improve your position. But you just, you change your mindset around. You got to get a little more scrappy, but because you know what it takes, it's not rocket science. You're not trying to figure it out when you have your back against the wall.
And I feel like this speaks really strongly to a pivot. And, we talked offline that one of the things that's kind of been all the rage in GoBundance Women is looking at cash flowing businesses rather than just at cash flowing properties. So my vantage point is if I zoom out and try to get as logical on life as I possibly can, if I'm going to buy multifamily at a 4 cap, it's value equals NOI over cap rate. Just the simple math of that, if I'm buying at a 4 cap, I'm basically saying I'm willing to pay $25 for a dollar of cash flow, for that dollar of NOI. Well, if I want to buy something like, let's say, a car wash, the multiple that I'll pay of EBITDA, like another form of cash flow kind of, is I'll pay $3 for that dollar of cash flow. Why would I choose to only look at the stuff that costs me $25 for a dollar of cash flow when it is available to me that I might be able to buy $3 for that dollar of cash flow? So that is the reason for the pivot right now into the car wash.
Yeah. So I wanted to have your car wash, but really quick, I'm curious your opinion on this whole movement as a CEO of GoBundance Women. I'm sure you see this a lot, but it's something that I'm not sure how I feel about it because, with the rise of Cody Sanchez and like buy an ugly business and boring business, whatever she says, all these different things, right? I'm starting to see this huge move, and I've seen in different groups where you have like these people that are, baseline employees. They work at a company, they make $65,000 a year, and they are going, I'm going to buy a bunch of businesses so that I can achieve financial freedom. They've never run a business before. They've never managed teams of people. They've never had to deal with any sort of corporate structure other than the one that they are currently a cog in. And I just have like this view of seeing these people go in, and now they're suddenly in charge of 35 people at a bookbinding business or whatever it is, but they have no leadership experience. There's no way that ends well. Like, it just doesn't make sense, honestly.
You're not wrong. And investing in a business is nowhere near passive. Yeah. Even the very few employee car wash, if you're not setting up SOPs, if you're not setting up things that happen on a daily basis, on a weekly basis, on a monthly basis, setting expectations, measuring things that you cannot manage anything that you're not measuring. I say that a lot in my real estate portfolio too. But if you're not measuring stuff, if you're not hands in, it's really difficult to know if it's working or not. It's just not some magical wand that poof, you're going to get, stacks of cash. It's absolutely something that requires skill, that requires commitment, and requires your hands being dirty.
Yeah, and it is a concern that I have because I worry about these uneducated individuals going and getting, the bookbinding business on seller finance, and now all of a sudden there's 35 other lives that are at their mercy, and they've never done that before because in their view, because it's a quote unquote asset, a cash flowing asset, as people say with these businesses, it's not different than buying like a multifamily property when it's really very, very different.
But you can screw up a multifamily too.
That's true.
Like
That's
if
true.
you are not prepared, if you don't know something, I think that this is just an outlook I have on the world.
Yeah.
If I don't know something, I am completely willing to say I have no idea. I'm going to go find somebody who does, right? If you lead your life with curiosity, if you are that person who makes $65,000 a year working as a cog in a wheel, and you are super curious, and you're willing to go ask the what feels like the dumb questions that you'll get found out, like go do it. You are the one who is going to be the exception. If you're somebody who, just feels empowered because somebody else did it, you might have a harder time. The interesting thing, though, of GoBundance Women is, most of us have found tremendous success in whatever business we work in. So, those skill sets kind of already exist. So it is kind of maybe an anomaly or a spurious correlation, but we see a lot of businesses being acquired and grown successfully in our organization.
Yeah, it's funny. I guess in GoBundance, I would worry about it a little bit less just because, there's a net worth requirement. There's, a typical character that's drawn to that kind of environment. But it is like some of just the random groups I'm in, or like these free Facebook groups that people join. Right. It's like, oh, here's how you can buy a business in your next 30 days. It's like, well, you probably should get your own stuff in order first before you go and take on the lives of a bunch of other people.
And back to that floor of income. When absolutely. You know that you're doing things with the best interest of that business or multifamily in mind, it's easier to make decisions.
For sure. Yeah. So let's talk about your car wash. Okay. So how recent is this acquisition?
A couple weeks. We've been under contract for a couple months. But the nature of this is I knew I wanted a business with not a lot of employees. So I wanted it to be really heavy real estate. So that was either a laundromat or a car wash. And I wanted it to complete this sentence in the right way. Chat GPT can't replace car washes.
Car washes.
Like that's really kind of because like Maslow's hierarchy of needs is the entire reason that I buy apartment buildings, right? You always need a place to live. You never in your life need a Bitcoin. You never in your life need a certificate of deposit, right? But you need a roof over your head. So when it comes to car washes or laundromats, the ChatGPT can't replace that, right?
Yeah.
So I felt like it would rhyme more if it was real estate heavy. And I knew that I had a single family home that had appreciated about $100,000 that I was getting out of. So I could 1031 exchange that extra $100,000 and not pay taxes on it into the building. Well, I segregated that out into two transactions, one for the building, one for the business. Ended up able to buy the building with nothing out of pocket because it was 1031 funds. And then with a partner, bought the business. So I have help in running the business day to day. And I personally, because I'm a real estate professional, had the opportunity to enjoy that depreciation of the car wash.
Yeah, that's awesome. So I'm assuming that both of those purchases are from the same person. So the previous owner of the business also owns, in case you weren't like having to negotiate both sides. The real estate, I'm sure it was pretty straightforward. Let's talk about the acquisition of the business itself. So did you go and get financing for this? Was it SBA loan? Is it seller financed? Did you pay cash for it?
So I structured that both of the deals so that I could have as many dollars as possible falling under the building because, and here's why. A lot of this stuff is happy accident, but it's all kind of, it's how I would do most of it again if I was doing it again. Well, the amortization you can get on a building is 20 or 30 years. The amortization you're going to get on a business is usually max 10 years, right? The rate you can get when you have done a lot of real estate stuff from a local bank is much lower, and the term is much longer than you can get for a business. So what I chose to do was put as many dollars as possible under the building and borrow against that because it's asset backed. It makes sense. I would way rather lend on something that was asset backed rather than somebody's ability to run a business. And then we ended up just paying cash for a much smaller amount of cash for the business portion.
Yeah. So I guess going back to like the T12 with this. So the business owner was obviously the person that also owned the building. Were they like paying rent so that you could like show that tied to the asset, or how did you structure that? Because I could imagine, depending on the lender, that they might have this arm's length view on it that could get a little bit weird.
Well, it was an appraisal situation. So It was, what's the highest and best of this building? The building actually appraised for more than we paid in total for the business and the building combined, which felt really good to me. But I knew from looking at all the other property records that it was a deal that made sense. It was a guy who, he's in his 70s. He's owned this for 18 years. He was getting out of it because he is one of those boomers that is trying to leave his business behind so he can travel with his girlfriend, and he liked that my business partner in the business is my boyfriend. He liked that we were running at this together, and we, were able to negotiate a reasonable price. And he's been super helpful in us getting on our feet, working through all of the systems.
Yeah, that's great. So as you're getting into this, what were some of the, I would say, like biggest lessons that you learned, some of the gotchas, especially with the car wash? I would assume there's some like environmental things and stuff like that might make it a little bit more complicated than other sort of business that you could buy. But I'm completely uneducated
as many
to this.
As I anticipated, I'll be honest. The thing that didn't rhyme as perfectly with multifamily setup was merchant services. Being able to collect people's credit card payments. Figuring that out and there were two different systems, and they're super old school. And it really, I'm not the most patient person being on hold for an hour and a half, but I had an opportunity to work on that with this acquisition. So,
isn't it fascinating how complex that is? Like, honestly, it's like trying to figure out how to be able to take people's money when it's a merchant style business like that. So like when we started our instant investor group coaching program, subscription style business, right? It's all online. And for us to get approved by payment processors, we had to go through 3 different ones before we finally got approved, because they would be like, well, we want to see that you have a record of business. I'm like, well, I can't have a freaking record of business if I can't collect anyone's money, right? And then we ended up having Stripe, like our first Stripe account. They withheld like $25,000 from us because we were deemed quote unquote high risk. And we didn't get that money back for like 14 months. They just held on to it forever. It was crazy.
Yes. Oh my gosh. This sounds like an Alex Hormozy thing. I mean,
his was like $200K or whatever his was, but
still hurts.
Yeah, it still hurts, so it's just such a weird thing, right? Because you even had a track record for that business. Like there was no reason for them to be that way.
Yeah. My business, there was a track record, and I tried to just sign over. One of these systems, we were just able to sign over and put those funds into a different bank account. The other one's been, because it was 18 years ago then it was started, the actual vendor doesn't exist anymore. Got absorbed by somebody, and now it's Bank of America and they don't want to support it, which I completely understand. So we're working through it, but that was something that I hadn't bargained for, being a stumbling block. One tip, though, if you're doing something like yours that is a recurring thing, there are website systems. My website, I go through Wix, which I'm able to just use their merchant services and tap into stuff like Stripe. So if somebody is in your shoes with similar merchant service issues, try going through your website and Stripe.
Yeah, so we were using Kajabi, which also offers that through Stripe. The problem was because it was a high ticket item. So things were, between $3,000 and $5,000 transactions. And so that was immediately flagged as being questionable. Because I think if we were selling like, $20 widgets, it would have been completely different. Especially because it was a digital service as well.
Which I feel like there's a joke in here because I own a motel and now a car wash. So Breaking Bad and like Ozark.
Right, yeah.
Like I'm probably going to flag myself, I guess.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it makes sense. Like, it would be very easy for someone to move money that way, but either way, that's a whole side tangent.
Not us. We're good people.
Yeah, right.
Listen up.
Yeah, right. So, no, that's cool. So I guess, what is your long-term strategy with this car wash? Are you trying to do an NOI increase and exit, or are you just planning to hold on to this thing and just print money?
I'm a buy and watch girl, Mike. I if this ends up with systems behind it that it does cash flow, in a way that that it's a little more hands off. If we get those SOPs in place and it's hands off, I would love to hold it for the long term. One thing that's also very interesting is once you've achieved an EBITDA that is, in the couple millions of dollars, the multiple increases because the private money, the private equity, they want to buy a larger business. So if you have pieced together a bunch of smaller businesses into one larger business with a much higher EBITDA, you get a higher multiple. So that is like the ultimate value add in business. I would love to continue to acquire things. Once I have my legs under me at this one that's nearby, acquire some businesses similar and install a manager to be able to grow that in a larger way.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that makes perfect sense. Is this like one of those like automated ones too, or is like one of the ones where people are just like washing themselves?
It's all self-service,
Sweet.
which is, if you think about it, it's a very different avatar of a human who wants to wash their own car versus go through one of those big tunnels.
Yeah.
And it tends to be a person who works with their hands. So I'm looking in areas where there's populations of people that are tradespeople.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's one last question on this, because I know people always want to know this. How'd you find this deal? Was it a broker? Did you like have a relationship with the guy? Just happenstance?
Biz buy sell.
There you go.
One thing when I help people find multifamily, especially if you want something that's smaller, I just have them set up a Zillow search so that they know what on sale looks like. So it comes to your inbox and you then know that, oh my gosh, a $200,000 fourplex in this area is on sale. I need to look at it. I saw that from Biz Buy Sell to my inbox and ran after it.
Yeah. It is such a underrated thing, honestly, like just using the platforms that are out there for you to do that. There's like this weird thing, like this mentality that exists, I don't know why, where they think that if something is on one of those websites that it's not a good deal, because if it was, somebody would have already bought it. But the problem is now it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy where everyone thinks that same thing. So now just like having the opposite thought process and looking at the opportunities on there probably are lots of good ones because everyone thinks that they're bad because no one's looked at them.
Well, totally. And I mean, the story for like a LoopNet is probably a little bit more straight line than for a business, you know, because where else would the business brokers aren't quite as aggressive as multifamily brokers, right? So that middleman that forces the opportunity for lots of eyes to see a deal before it hits LoopNet doesn't really exist in business buying. So
just smaller buyer pool, more variability in it. It makes sense. And you said BiggerPockets is going to do a web series on it?
Yes. I happened to be at BiggerPockets Con and made some friends there and was talking to some more junior investors who really had wished that there was business plus real estate breakouts happening. And I was buying this car wash. So I pitched one of my buddies that I made on, well, maybe we should do a little web series, a couple of episodes on this. And they greenlit it, Mike. So
nice. That's
actually
awesome.
Tomorrow we're doing our first filming, should go live sometime in January.
Sweet. That'll be cool. Do you think BiggerPockets is going to go towards doing more like business purchasing content and stuff like that?
I think BiggerPockets is really astute that they're looking at what's happening in the marketplace and like the hunger of their viewership, right? And this is something that's all the rage in a lot of places, right? So to offer educational content, I think is something they will run after.
Yeah. I mean, they are a content business at the end of the day, so they need to make content that people want to hear. You can go and preach the same messages from 10 years ago, but if no one's listening anymore, kind of what's the point? Awesome. Well, cool. I'm excited for that. I'll have to keep track of that when that comes out.
Great.
Right on, Mandy. Well, I appreciate all the insights that you've had. You've obviously done a lot of great things. We are going to start to dive into the end of the show questions here. So the first question that is one of our crowd favorites is, what is your craziest real estate investing story? This can be a big win, a big loss, crazy tenant, crazy transaction, whatever you got.
So my 6-unit, one of the very first things I've ever bought, throws off about $4,500 a month. This is like the thing that really propelled me into being able to leave my W-2. Well, I was moderating a panel at a GoBundance Women event, actually on buying businesses, and my watch had somebody calling me. So I said, can I call you later? That thing, right? And then I got a text back from that number. It happened to be the guy who owned the fourplex next to my sixplex. And he's like, yeah, there's been a murder at your building. And I'm like, so then I'm in the middle of moderating. I'm like, well, so how do you feel about SBA loans? And I have to keep my act together.
Sweating, you're getting nervous.
So anyway, it was a bad guy did something in a neighboring town and his girlfriend lived in my building. So working through the downstream stuff and needing to keep my cool for about an hour was a pretty crazy situation.
Yeah. And we haven't had to deal with something like that yet. We do have a situation right now where one of our tenants is MIA and our property manager can't get into the property and we're worried that he's dead in there, but we're not really sure how to approach it. I don't know. Have you any tips about dealing with a situation like that?
With 373 units, like people unfortunately die in their homes on
Yeah.
a regular basis, right?
Mhm.
So, contacting next of kin
Yeah.
and the police to do a wellness check is
Yeah.
the direction I'd go.
Yeah. Okay. We'll do that. So I guess what was the end result of yours? So there was actually a murder like that? It wasn't an overblown situation?
A bad guy did a bad thing. And then he
Okay.
came to hang out with his girlfriend who lived in my building.
Oh,
And
gotcha.
the police were able to get what they needed. And everything is wonderful and we're non-renewing.
There you go. Yeah. At least it wasn't in, your specific building as a whole. But no, that's a good one. All right. Second question. What is the number one tip you would give to an investor trying to scale their real estate business?
I think it's super important to begin with the end in mind. If what you want is financial freedom and you decide that the way you're going to get there is flipping or syndicating, I'm here to tell you, you only get paid once when you flip a house. You only get one acquisition fee when you're doing a syndication, right? So if what you want is a recurring income coming in, it's a different approach. It's a different structure. It's a different type of asset potentially. So whatever life you want, you've got to keep that your North Star and then acquire real estate in that fashion. Yeah,
I think that's huge. And making sure that you are putting side investments into that long-term sort of view.
Yeah.
You've seen a lot of people that were just in that flipping frenzy in 2020, 2021, who are not super happy right now. They made a ton of money back then, inflated their lifestyle. They didn't put anything into some long-term assets for themselves. And that's not a great place to be. So really, really great advice. Awesome. And then last question, Mandy, where can people find you, follow you, and reach out to you?
I'm official Mandy McAllister on most of the platforms, but mandymcallister.com will help you link to GoBundance Women and all the other stuff I'm up to.
Perfect. Right on. Well, Mandy, I really appreciate you coming on the show. You've had an incredible amount of knowledge, and I really appreciate your time and your willingness to share all of that with our audience here.
So fun, Mike. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. Right on, guys. Well, hopefully you enjoyed that show. She dropped some amazing knowledge in there, so might not be a bad idea to go back and listen again, take some notes, especially around some of the stuff that she was mentioning with the different kinds of corporate debt. I personally realized that I have some knowledge gaps there that I need to go dive into, and I'm sure a lot of you do as well. So definitely go back, take some notes, and reach out to Mandy as well, guys. Remember, people come onto these shows because they want to engage with you. They want to have exposure. We don't go and force people to come on here. It's all willing. It's because they want to deliver a message to the wider audience. So don't be afraid to hit her up on her social medias and her website. Besides everybody, we really appreciate you all and talk to you guys next week.